morning, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I'd like to start off our program with an introduction of a local climate leader named Aparna Bol. She serves as a leader in the Office of Climate Change and Health Equity, based in the United States Department of Health and Human Services. Dr. Bol is a pediatrician here in Cleveland area and a longtime member and leader of the local sustainability movement. She is committed to pediatric environmental health, sustainable inclusive urban design as a public health imperative, and advocating for sustainable healthcare practices. And we'll be sharing our welcome remarks this morning. Can you please give her a round of applause?
Good morning. Thank you, Sarah, for the introduction, and thanks for the opportunity to be here. It's really a pleasure and a privilege for me to be here to help welcome all of you and to thank you for participating in this important convening. I'd like to make the case this morning that the work that you'll be doing today on advancing Cleveland's pathway to decarbonization is fundamentally a public health intervention. Historically, we've conceptualized climate change as an issue that affects distant species in distant places and in distant times, like polar bears in the Arctic Circle decades from now, decades in the future. But what we know now is that climate change is affecting human health right here and now. In 2021, over 200 medical journals around the world published a consensus editorial. 200 medical journals, like you could never get 200 medical journals to agree on anything, but they published a consensus editorial describing climate change as the greatest threat to global public health. We also know that the health effects of climate change are inequitably distributed. Just like with all environmental exposures, children are disproportionately affected because of their unique windows of growth and development, their physiology, their reliance on adults and functional community infrastructure for their daily needs. We also know that inequitable health harms occur because of differences in exposure, sensitivity, and adaptive capacity. So there are other populations that are disproportionately affected as well. Systemically marginalized populations are more likely to experience exposure to hazards. They may be more likely to have underlying conditions that increase their sensitivity and lack the resources often to be able to adapt and recover. These realities are why the Office of Climate Change and Health Equity was created by President Biden's Executive Order 14008. We affectionately pronounce the name of the office OCHE, the Office of Climate Change and Health Equity, so you'll hear me calling it that. OCHE is charged with coordinating efforts across the Department of Health and Human Services to protect vulnerable populations from the health impacts of climate change and to contribute to centering health and health equity in climate actions by the whole of government. Just a quick plug, if you want to learn more about OCHE's work, including how we're supporting climate action across the health sector, to access resources like our seasonal climate and health forecast, which is called the Climate and Health Outlook, and to stay abreast of new announcements and resources, please check out OCHE online, and you can sign up for our OCHE Alerts newsletter as well. Prior to joining OCHE, I practiced for many years as a pediatrician here in Cleveland. That's how I know that while climate change is a global health issue, we see the effects here locally on the health of our people right here in Cleveland and in Northeast Ohio. Extreme heat is the leading cause of weather-related morbidity and mortality in the United States. Longer and more intense heat waves are becoming more frequent. Seniors can be especially vulnerable to heat-related illness, and in my pediatric practice, I would worry about risks to young infants with immature thermoregulation and student athletes doing long practices outside on hot days. Extreme heat is associated with preterm labor and premature birth, and it can impact attention and learning in school children. Increased moisture in a warmer atmosphere leads to more extreme precipitation events. We've seen heavy precipitation events increase already in Ohio, more than doubling in frequency since a century ago. We've seen how these events can damage property, cause flooding, and cause runoff during storm events that can lead to pollution of our waterways and our Great Lakes. Climate change can impact air quality with more formation of surface ozone or smog. According to the Asthma and Allergy Foundation, 6 of the top 20 most challenging cities to live in for people with asthma are in Ohio. And in Cleveland, 1 in 5 children has asthma. There are significant racial disparities in the prevalence of asthma and the frequency of emergency department visits and hospitalizations for asthma in our state, with Black children and adults being disproportionately affected. Black children in Ohio have over twice the asthma prevalence as white children do, and Black adults' emergency department visits for asthma exacerbations are five times higher in this state than white residents. Finally, climate change is bringing longer and more intense allergy seasons to our region, especially in northern latitudes like ours. This impacts our patients with asthma as well. The good news is climate solutions are health solutions. Accelerating our clean energy transition has immediate health benefits. A big reason for this is that this reduces air pollution caused by burning fossil fuels. And for our children, these air pollutants are not only toxic to the developing lungs, both causing and exacerbating asthma, they are also toxic to the developing brain. Exposure to these air pollutants can impact attention, behavior, learning, and even sleep in children. Exposure to these air pollutants can also cause prematurity and low birth weight. So, we talk a lot about improving birth outcomes and reducing infant mortality, and about making sure we're investing in young children's development and school readiness. If we're serious about healthier babies and school-ready kids, we need to get serious about clean air. We need to understand that decarbonization is a solution that really supports better birth outcomes and healthy developing brains. A study from the Harvard School of Public Health from a few years ago looked at the regional return on investment from clean energy in the United States, considering both economic returns and positive health impacts. The Upper Midwest and the Great Lakes regions showed the highest ROI from clean energy investments by a pretty significant margin. So put another way, we could say that compared to other parts of the country, our region is poised to benefit the most from the kind of work that you're doing together today. This work is timely, as we're in a critical moment for bold climate action to prevent global warming from passing a tipping point beyond which ecological, economic, and health consequences could be exponentially more catastrophic. Not only is climate change the most pressing global health threat of our time, climate action is the greatest public health opportunity and imperative of this moment. We're also in a unique moment because the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act is bringing unprecedented resources to support climate action across the country. Because I am so personally invested in the health of Clevelanders, especially our children, I am really rooting for Cleveland's leadership in decarbonization. All the energy in this room gives me such a sense of optimism and belief in that leadership. So I will conclude by wishing you the best for a productive and energizing event today. Thank you so much for your attention and for your participation. Thanks to the City of Cleveland for convening this incredibly important effort and for allowing me to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bull. I would like to bring up Power a Clean Future Ohio. They are a nonpartisan coalition that works with local leaders to develop and implement proven climate solutions and are committed to reducing carbon emissions throughout Ohio in big and small ways that make sense for each local community. Cleveland is a Power a Clean Future Ohio community. I'm going to bring up Joe Flarida to talk more about that and have an award presentation.
Oh, good morning, everyone. I got to give away a little hardware this morning, so it's exciting for me. My name is Joe Flarida. I'm the Executive Director of Power a Clean Future Ohio. And we work with communities all across the state of Ohio. We're unique to the state in that we just work with local governments, all about implementing clean energy solutions and reducing emissions. We know the challenge we face here in the state of Ohio. We also know the global challenge we're facing. Recent reports from the Rhodium Group put Ohio as the third largest emitting state. So if we're going to solve this global challenge in the U.S., we're going to solve it here in Ohio. And we also know, based on the realities we face in this state, that if we're going to solve it in the state of Ohio, we're going to solve it locally. Our cities are going to lead. We're going to decarbonize our state, decarbonize our economy through local solutions. And so through PCFO, we have the opportunity to recognize the cities and also work directly with them to do that work along the way. So today I want to recognize Mayor Bibb and the City of Cleveland for their excellence in reducing emissions. So number one is the Climate Action Community Award for committing to reduce emissions in alignment with the Paris Climate Accords, reducing emissions by at least 30% by 2030. Cleveland has surpassed that goal by putting in a goal of 40% by 2030 below 2010 levels. And the second award is the Clean Energy Community Award, which goes to communities that have implemented a 100% clean energy program, mostly through aggregation, which is a recent exciting news coming out of Cleveland for the next iteration of that program. The request for proposals is out, which I'm excited to see what comes next. So with that, I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here and recognize Mayor Bibb and the City of Cleveland for your excellence in this area.
Thank you so much, Joe. Good morning, everybody. Now, we got to do better than that. We got a lot of good work to do today. Good morning, everybody. Well, I am so honored to be here today to kick off our city's first ever Decarbonization Summit. And before I dive into my very brief remarks, I want to say just at the onset, nearly 3 years ago today, if you would have asked me what decarbonization was, I would have been probably clueless. I would have probably thought it was a fancy thing that research experts at the UN talked about or research experts in DC talked about. But when I ran for mayor nearly 2 years ago, I realized very clearly what this topic means to our great city. For me as mayor, this is all about how do we uplift Black and brown communities so that they can truly achieve the economic opportunity that they deserve. Everything from making sure we truly can become the forest city once again by planting more trees across our city. That's why I'm so excited that we've finally restored the Tree Commission for a long time in the city of Cleveland as well, too. To me, it's making sure that we can finally make sure that no child in our community is ever poisoned by lead paint again. And we've made a lot of good progress over the last year on that front. We've been working with our state leadership to make sure we eradicate the lead water lines in our daycare facilities and are working very closely with the Lead Safe Coalition to abet almost every home in the city of Cleveland as well, too. The other thing that's so critical is making sure that not just the city of Cleveland, but that the private sector and our foundation community can join us in this mission, because we in our city cannot do it alone. And the other thing that I think is so important is, as we think about the historic investment that this president has made through the Inflation Reduction Act, we want to make sure that as we think about electric vehicles, that in the poorest parts of our city, that they can too see that EV charging and electric vehicles can be a part of their amenities in their neighborhood. So at the end of last year, we launched the first ever EV charging station in the Lee Harvard neighborhood in the city of Cleveland as well, too. But we have a lot more work to do. And this summit is all about making sure that we not just talk the talk, but walk the walk with real plans, because Cleveland can't wait for real change on this important issue for our city and in our nation. And, you know, in the early 1990s, when George Voinovich was mayor of this great city, the Washington Post had a headline that said, "What America can learn from Cleveland." What America can learn from Cleveland. As we look at 2023 and the years ahead, I believe on climate justice and resiliency, we can show America and we can show the world what a legacy American city can do to make sure that we can eradicate the issues of climate justice in our respective city and in our nation. And I have an exciting announcement on that front to talk about. Just yesterday, the city of Cleveland joined the National Better Climate Challenge from the Department of Energy, which commits our city for decreasing emissions from our own operations by 50% over the next 10 years. And so, as I conclude, I want to also just acknowledge the amazing work of our new leader of Resiliency and Climate Justice Sustainability, Director Sarah O'Keefe. Let's give her and her team a round of applause.
Thank you, Mayor Bibb. Okay, so everyone, I just want to you met a few of us here on stage, and now most of us are seated, so I would like to take this opportunity for you at your tables to take this opportunity to introduce yourselves around the table and what inspires you to be here today. You have about 10 minutes if you want to refill your coffee, tea, water, and introduce yourselves around the table. Welcome back, everyone. So this next part of our session is going to talk about local and national progress on climate action. I've already introduced myself, but just a couple more words on that in case you just arrived. I'm Sarah O'Keefe. I have the honor of being the Director for Sustainability and Climate Justice and leading Mayor Bibb's Office of Sustainability. I humbly thank all of you today for being here to contribute to the work of taking action on climate together, using data and science and community engagement and focused passion to make measurable progress on climate and health in our legacy city of Cleveland, Ohio. I think a number of you have been involved in this effort for the past decade or more. I know there are a number of former leaders of this office who are here today, and thank you for being here. For over a decade now, the broader Cleveland community has been regularly engaged and brought together by this office, the Mayor's Office of Sustainability, and partners to collaboratively plan action on climate. Our current Cleveland Climate Action Plan, or CAP for short, was created in 2013 and has been most recently updated in 2018. The creation and update of this plan used data-driven analysis, but also key input from residents, community groups, nonprofit organizations, businesses, and regional partners, and individuals like you here today. The current focus areas of our Climate Action Plan are energy efficiency and green building, clean energy, sustainable transportation, clean water and vibrant green space, more local food and less waste, and cross-cutting priorities that were already emphasized by Mayor Justin Bibb earlier this morning. This is a picture of our low to moderate solar income program that was instituted last year as a pilot program and that we're seeking to expand. And those cross-cutting priorities include youth engagement, workforce development. Here's a photo of youth in our summer youth employment program in 2022, creating rain barrels for stormwater management and that get distributed to residents. So we just wanted to acknowledge what Cleveland has already accomplished. There's been a lot of important work that surrounds and weaves in and out of the Cleveland Climate Action Plan. We have emissions reporting through the Carbon Disclosure Project. We were awarded an A- in that effort for transparency and progress. Their Sustainable Cleveland Municipal Action Plan and data collection for the city's own operations is also in force. That benchmarks the city's own operational goals through Sustainable Cleveland Municipal Action Plan and is on our website, sustainablecleveland.org. We are expanding the reach of the goals of the Climate Action Plan through continued community building and engagement that brought about a number of other plans: Clean and Equitable Energy Future Plan, Lead for Cities, Silver designation, and most recently, the establishment of the Circular Cleveland Roadmap. All of these speak to our collaborative city. Supporting and enabling groups in place are here today, and a number of your logos are on this screen. We thank you for these collaborative plans and frameworks. These plans, combined with leadership and commitment from Mayor Justin Bibb, combine to advance climate justice through every aspect of the Bibb administration. And this is what is currently driving our work at the city and with our partners. The North Star of the Mayor's Office of Sustainability is to make progress on our climate and equity commitments. And our first step is to harness the various goals in these plans into a clear and regularly evaluated strategy that is really accountable to our greater Cleveland community and that results in measured progress and implementation and outcomes. We are measuring and tracking success, as I said, on sustainablecleveland.org. However, there's another way that we want to start including a tracking of our success. These are the UN Sustainable Development Goals you'll hear much more about from our next speaker. How are we doing when we're using the global lens of these sustainability goals? These are 17 goals for a better world to grow sustainably. They are centered in equity and reinforce environmental justice and ending systemic racism and must be advanced in order to advance sustainability with climate justice at the heart. They were negotiated over a 2-year period in the United Nations and adopted by 193 nations in 2015, and they are due in 2030. So how do our plans that we already have in place and our goals line up? The Climate Action Plan, if you can see this, really connects with the pink boxes that we're doing here. Blue, Mayor Bibb's platform, and then green, our Circular Cleveland Roadmap. This is wonderful because you can see that it shows that our local planning is also contributing to global trends. The question is, what do we want to focus on first and foremost in order to make these measurable impacts? We have done a lot of impactful projects and programs. How do they connect and measure up when we see them at the system level? Just to review our Cleveland Climate Action Plan commitments and progress in brief, as I said, we have a climate action plan that was created in 2013 and most recently updated in 2018, very notably for cooperative participation and initiatives. And in 2018, the racial equity tool was used to review all of the goals and indicators. It is notable for having actions that mitigate or directly act on causes of climate change by reducing greenhouse gas emissions and offer adaptation resilience to climate change impacts. The reporting is aligned with the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy Reporting. So for our overall mitigation and emissions and goals and targets, we have 16% reduction from a 2010 baseline to 2020, a 40% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions goal from 2010 baseline to 2030, and 80% from 2010 to 2050, which includes transitioning Cleveland to 100% clean and renewable energy sources, and that's part of the Clean and Equitable Energy Plan. Like many others in this space, Cleveland has made progress, significant progress. However, you can see we're not quite on track with our goals. We have decoupled emissions of 11% as of 2018. So what are we doing to advance these goals more rapidly? As the mayor said, Cleveland can't wait. We want to use a lens, the decarbonization lens, to approach the 2023 update to our climate action plan to help advance those goals more rapidly. Just a note on measuring against the Sustainable Development Solutions, the Sustainable Development Goals. This is a scorecard. I know it's a bit hard to see, but this is a scorecard that Sustainable Development Solutions Network USA put out in 2019, and it measures progress on the Cleveland-Elyria Metropolitan Statistical Area. So what this says is that we have strong performance in climate action, responsible consumption, clean water, and sanitation. However, we have weak performance in hunger, poverty, clean energy, and gender equity. So this gives us an idea of how Cleveland is performing in these areas and can give us insight. Climate action is at the top, but some quantitative goals pertaining to equity and human health are towards the bottom of that list. What do we want to do specifically? We want to advance sustainability and climate justice. We want to have quantitative carbon reduction targets that can help us refine our existing targets for our CAP and related plans. We want to prioritize the timing of those projects the city is considering or already involved in. We want to attract federal and other investments. We want to improve community health and equity, both now and in the future. And we want to make that measured progress because Cleveland cannot wait. Today, when we think about decarbonization, we think about these questions to be answered and to achieve that carbon neutrality by 2050, to make that rapid progress, and to achieve our goals we've already committed to, and to update our goals to achieve that carbon neutrality. What changes in infrastructure are required and when? Where will these changes take place and how will they impact our communities? And how can we ensure that no one is left behind and bring along the historically disadvantaged communities? What changes will carbon neutrality incur for energy, industry, transportation, food and land systems? And what policies are needed? What is the cost of these changes? And how will it impact jobs? These are questions that we need to work on together as we advance. The City of Cleveland has been looking at decarbonization of energy systems as a lens to help focus the answers to these questions. Decarbonization, you have the definition on your table on a glossary, but I have it here as well, is reducing or eliminating the amount of carbon dioxide emitted into the atmosphere by human activities, especially those emitted from burning fossil fuels. So there's a focus on energy systems here. And energy systems meaning things that underpin our entire society: transportation, buildings, land use, and the energy systems themselves. A decarbonization pathway, which you'll hear more about from our speaker, Gordon McCord, are blueprints for the energy system that reaches this future greenhouse gas reduction target of 2050, net zero emissions by 2050. They are clear, science-based, and comprehensive outline of technologies, investments, and policies needed to reach an emissions goal by a certain year. And they're long-term. I think it's important to think that these are long-term, decades-long goals that we're talking about, so they need to be absolutely centered in equity as we make those long-term choices. The initiative that we've been involved in order to use this decarbonization pathway lens to update our Cleveland Climate Action Plan is to work with Sustainable Development Solutions Network, also known as SDSN for short, so you'll hear that term a lot, SDSN. We have partnered with SDSN to work on what these pathways look like at the regional level. They've already been quantified at the national level. There's an image on the left-hand side of the slide, Zero Carbon Climate Action Plan. And we are looking to regionally define decarbonization pathways to inform our Cleveland Climate Action Plan. Please note that the technical design sessions this afternoon will specifically share some of that data. And that's a separate event from this public event this morning. And if you have a sticker on your name tag that tells you where you're going to go, that you will be attending the afternoon session. If you have any questions about that, you can go to registration in the foyer. So we invite, if you do not have a sticker on your tag, we still invite you, of course, to connect with the Mayor's Office of Sustainability on this work as we advance its design. In fact, we have aligned our office structure with transitioning infrastructure at the systems level and these 5 areas of subject matter expertise, and this will be updated on our website. And finally, as we think about how this informs our Cleveland Climate Action Plan update, and as we move today's programs into a review of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, I wanted to wrap up with our areas of Climate Action Plan, how they connect to our office structure, and how I see our current work as connecting to decarbonization pillars of energy efficiency, electricity decarbonization, electrification, and carbon capture and storage. On the left-hand side of the slide are our climate action areas currently. In the middle are our different office structures, subject matter expertise. We retain subject matter expertise in these areas, and we are about to hire a nature-based solutions person, by the way. And then on the right, we have the methods of decarbonization. So I just wanted to wrap up there as I conclude. I invite you to reference the glossary of terms on your table throughout the day as a little bit of an aid for all of us to have the same language. Thank you, and then I invite Deepa to come up, who is our next speaker. I just need to get my notes a little bit here, sorry, folks. Okay, Deepa Vedavyas serves as the Program Manager of Neighborhoods and Environment at the Cleveland Foundation, where she works on an integrated, broad-based approach that knits together the work of built environment, neighborhoods, housing and community development, and built capacity for the Greater Cleveland's environmental sector to advance equity. Deepa is an experienced planner and nonprofit administrator with a wealth of expertise and training in sustainable development, urban planning, architecture, teaching, and nonprofit management. Deepa also serves as co-chair of Diversity, Equity, and Justice for the Sustainable Development for the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network in USA. Thank you. Please welcome her.
Very good morning, everyone. It's my absolute pleasure to be here with you all today. And I'm Deepa Vedavyas. I serve as a program manager for neighborhoods and environment at the Cleveland Foundation. And this is the position that I serve in is the first intersectionality position that cut across 2 program areas within the foundation. This definition of sustainability, as mentioned in the Brundtland Commission report, is something that I'm sure, like all of us, are very familiar with. That talks about sustainability in the context of meeting our own needs without compromising the ability of future generation to meet their own needs. And with that definition, or with that idea of sustainability, I would like to share a brief overview of the work that the Cleveland Foundation does. As the world's first community foundation that was founded in 1914, we serve across 3 county regions, Cuyahoga, Lake, and Geauga, and with an annual giving of about $120 million. And our early policy and advocacy influence work has started in sustainability, which many of you probably are already aware of with the metro parks. And we have continued our civic leadership in the region through our proactive initiatives, responsive grant making, while also valuing new ideas that have emerged over time, which also enables us not just to be looked at as a funder in the region, but also as a thought leader and a trusted partner within our region. In December of 2022, Cleveland Foundation, in partnership with Philanthropy Ohio, launched the SDG Learning Cohort for all the other foundations across Ohio, with a focus on Northern Ohio community foundations through the funding that we received from Mott Foundation. And during the first convening, we began by asking the community members who are participating in it from the foundation as what are their community needs that they were trying to address through their work. And this is what we heard, exactly the words that they said. They said the people's needs in their community are money, which is wealth building, food, healthcare, quality education, jobs, economic growth, building democracy, peace, housing, and having safe communities to live in, justice, and reduced inequalities. And when we asked the same question with the members, what are the needs of your environmental needs or the planet for the community needs, they shared that it is waste, reduction of waste, pollution, clean water, environment, having a safer environment and cleaner environment, and ecosystem health, biodiversity, energy, clean air, and land. So again, what we did was we then took what we heard from the first convening of the cohort and then shared how that fits within the larger global goals, otherwise also known as the Sustainable Development Goals. And essentially what we saw is that these goals, 14 of what they had shared already are part of the 17 larger goals. And these 17 goals came about by hearing 1 million voices, by taking into consideration the input of 1 million people's voices, that a report you would see published in 2013, a million voice report by UN, and also across 88 countries. So again, this is a framework that definitely makes it very robust and relatable, even though what we may be unfamiliar is the language or the terminologies or the numbering that is mentioned in the SDGs, but we are already, all of us are already doing the work in those impact areas. The literacy of the language or the SDGs might be unfamiliar, but we are certainly familiar of the work that is needed within those. But again, here the 17 goals listed, but again, what is critical of these 17 goals is that they are centered in equity, and the 2030 Central Transformative Agenda is to leave no one behind. There's a great amount of detail that comes within the 17 goals because there are not just the 17 goals themselves. It is adopted now by, currently by 194 countries, and also within the 17 goals are ingrained 169 targets. And targets are specifically how each and every region or every institution can have their own way to measure success and define what success looks like for their own institution, what success looks like for their own region, for the local government, so to speak. And the indicators, there are more than 250, but for the context of United States, there are 232 relevant indicators that are there within the Sustainable Development Goals framework. And these indicators are essentially the data points that can be used to assess progress. Where are we once we have defined what success is in every goal? So where are we, how are we doing as a region? How are we doing as an institution to contribute towards that larger goal? And it's very likely that each of your organization have multiple targets and indicators that aligns with your organizational strategy and growth. And it would certainly not be surprising to me if many of those already are aligning with the SDGs. Again, in beginning of 2022, Cleveland Foundation program team, we have been implicitly using this framework of SDGs in the program area, specifically to align all of our standard grant making, which is about 50% of our grants, where we aligned at the target level. And when we look back a year's worth of data from early 2022 all the way, what we have seen is these are the 11 areas that we have directly impacted through our grants. Even though, without the partnership for the goals, which is critical, that we cannot really move the needle without really partnering with you all in these efforts. Even though there are only 11 goals that probably we may have not all the 17 that we would have made the grants for, but multiple of these grants and the impact or the co-benefit certainly ties with other goals that we may not have directly made out grants to. So what do I mean by it? So these are some of our program areas. I'm a visual person, so I like to I created this for our benefit. So these are the these are the program areas within the Cleveland Foundation. And what do I mean by SDG framework seamlessly pinpoints the intersectionality or the interconnectedness or the co-benefits of our grant is that what is a grant made out through an environment program area, say for example towards energy, SDG 7, does not only touch SDG 7. As Dr. Aparna Bol mentioned, that has a significant impact on climate and health and well-being of the community members, providing decent job growth, and also, if done well and done right intentionally, it has a huge power to reduce inequalities within our communities. And this particular slides, I would like to show the most latest SDG cities ranking report, again published by the UNSDSN. Periodically, they publish the reports to see how cities are doing, in what areas are the cities doing well, and where are we struggling as a region. And as you notice, this is the most latest report. And again, you see there are some major challenges that is there within the first 5 goals in the first box. And the significant challenges, there are still education and reducing inequalities is also one of the significant challenge, but the only 2 that I've highlighted there have a downward trend, which means if we don't act now and don't act collectively, it could also go into the red area, which is a major challenge. So this is the data for Cleveland. And what this city ranking report does is also allows us to compare with the peer cities and see, learn from them. Where are they doing well? Can there be some learning? Like Pittsburgh is ahead of us, Detroit is ahead of us. So what are they doing in education that keeps them in a much better place than what are we doing? And again, we have also some learnings to share because some of our goals are have very minimal challenges. The ones that are not listed here are either in challenges which have minimal or they are achieved already. Which is when they mean achieve, which is like it's in the pathway to achieve the 2030 agenda if we continue to make the progress at the pace at which we are making. So it doesn't mean that we have actually got it all right now. And with that, I would like to share how is Cleveland Foundation thinking about this in our own program area strategy. This is just a small example because our program area is large, and we also have, my colleague, Stephen Lau, who is the director of Environment Program Area, who is here with us. So you can reach one of us to learn more about these initiatives. But again, within the SDG 7 and 10, I've taken few examples of how this relates to the larger goal while also tying into the city's efforts. So again, when you look at SDG 7, we talk about clean energy as equitable, affordable, and as a tool to create jobs. And how can we connect with the city's efforts? It is by supporting the city or cities to adapt benchmarks for the equitable clean energy transition. And also, Cleveland Foundation leverages our capital with public-private dollars to support these efforts, for example, community solar. And we cannot do that without our partners from other foundations like Gund and St. Luke's Foundation. In many of our efforts, we always partner, we always look for partnerships. And within climate and environmental justice, we invest in coalition to build power and the diversified climate and clean energy movement so that we can continue to strengthen collaboration to advance policies that is grounded in environmental justice. And the way we can use to track progress or how we measure is to see the increase in the BIPOC leadership representation and how the environmental movement and policy priorities can be accelerated. With that, I would also like to share that there are multiple benefits that comes with a shared language. Being a multilingual myself, I would say that using the SDG language in institutional level certainly allows us to be bilingual, allows us to communicate our work beyond just, say, for example, we are a foundation, beyond our foundation boundaries. It allows us to interact with corporates who are already using the matrices of SDGs to report their progress. They are using it as a tool of reporting. In our case, we are looking at this, can this be a tool for collective action? So again, every institution can certainly adopt and use this language to look at what could benefit them. And again, intersectionality, as I mentioned, is one that seamlessly is being captured in our work. And it also allows us to come together and measure and track progress once we have a clear definition of what our success in all these areas are going to look like. An outcome, certainly evidence and knowledge of collective action between traditional and non-traditional partners is really important. And this can certainly help us with that and also provide information around data to inspire action. Continuous action, we cannot start and stop an effort. It's for us to enable continuous action if we can connect in a common language around a common goal. It definitely allows us for that and enables us to look at several approaches, because even though foundations is 120 million, it sounds like a large amount. It is nowhere in comparison to being able to meet the needs of our challenges in the society. So we are one entity, coming together to look at it. If only we all can look at it in our own institutional level and look at where we are connecting to these goals, I think the continuous action will only be amplified. And towards that, final point that I have, again, there are probably multiple benefits. These are the ones that I have connected over the course of work. Whether between local government, civil society, or businesses, the SDGs common language certainly makes the communication both internally and externally possible to collaborate with one another, to learn from each other, and also to network beyond national networks and in international networks of foundation embarking these initiatives. And with that, I would like to conclude by saying that there is an upcoming event that is at Cleveland State University happening on the 18th, and we have internationally recognized panel of practitioners who are going to be here, who are experts in SDGs, who can help deepen the understanding of the SDG framework and also the opportunities that they bring to our region. And again, this framework, even though the vocabulary might be new, we are all working in it. So again, with the emphasis that the SDG literacy itself is not needed at the community level or a society level, it could certainly help institutions to serve our communities better. So with that, I would like to conclude, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Deepa. Next, I'd like to introduce Gordon McCord, Associate Professor of the School of Global Policy and Strategy in the University of California, San Diego. Gordon has a background in sustainable development and works at the intersection of development, economics, public health, and the environment. Gordon is also Senior Advisor to the Sustainable Development Solutions Network for the United Nations, and he does extensive policy work promoting the Sustainable Development Goals, including leading the SDSN USA network of U.S. universities and leading regional decarbonization framework for the San Diego County. Gordon?
Thanks, Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. Good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to join you and wonderful to see all of Cleveland's ambitions, and I'm genuinely excited to see how the city is going to evolve towards decarbonization over the next few years and decades. So I'll start just quickly by saying 2 words about SDSN. It's a global network of mostly universities and think tanks that look to support policymakers and governments all over the world in terms of meeting the Sustainable Development Goals that have just been spoken so eloquently about, but also the Paris Agreement goals for decarbonization. And then we're organized also within the United States, about 180 members, including around 100 universities across 46 states, all with the mission of trying to leverage the knowledge bank that we have in universities and our scientific community to support government, exactly as we're looking to do here in terms of Cleveland's decarbonization challenge. So one of the challenges that we've really focused on at SDSN USA is the climate change challenge. What we've learned from the scientific community, and they've been repeating it over and over for the last decades, in fact, is that going over 1.5 degree warming above the pre-industrial average is going to be completely disastrous for multiple systems on our planet and for humanity. And so it's absolutely critical that we try to limit warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. And how do we do that? They've done all the engineers have done all the work, the climate scientists have done all the work. If we want to limit warming to 1.5 degrees, we need to decarbonize by the middle of this century. And so that's what guides this urgent rush for decarbonization as fast as possible. We've only got around 25 years to fully transform our energy systems, our transportation systems, our food and land use systems, so that we can get to zero by the middle of this century. But that's why the middle of the century really emerges as such an important goal. And this elimination of greenhouse gas emissions, mostly carbon dioxide, but also methane and nitrous oxides by mid-century, that's what we call deep decarbonization. And figuring out how to do that is an enormously complex challenge, and it's what we're here to do today. The good news is that we have a lot of technological solutions that can get us a lot of the way there. We know how to clean up our energy system using multiple different sources of power, renewables and others, that can decarbonize our production of energy. We know we can reduce the amount of energy we use per person and per unit of economic activity. That is, increase our energy efficiency so that the challenge of decarbonization is reduced. A big part of this we know is we know we need to reduce the emissions from our building sector, and we've done so much work in terms of green buildings, reducing the footprint and the efficiency of buildings. We know we need to decarbonize our transportation system by investments in electric vehicles and investments in public transportation so that we can reduce the amount of miles that we're all traveling in each of our vehicles. We know we need to use nature through nature-based solutions. Nature has a power to sequester a large amount of carbon through natural means. We need to figure out exactly how much that is and how much of the problem it can solve for us, and then how to promote that through policy and investments, including, as was alluded to by the mayor earlier today, greening our cities, which has a benefit of carbon sequestration. And then we need to figure out how to just produce less waste at the end of our production stream, or what people refer to as a circular economy, so that we can, again, simplify the decarbonization problem for us. So solutions exist. We don't have all of the answers. We don't know exactly how we're going to fully decarbonize by mid-century. We need to admit to that there's a lot of technological uncertainty. But most folks who think about this hard will tell you, we know already how to get about 80% of the way there. And so we're ready to move as a society towards decarbonization as the science and the engineering progresses so that we can figure out how to decarbonize the last and the hardest 20% of our emissions. Progress, as all of you know, has been quite slow because this is a really, really hard problem. Let's not kid ourselves. This is not easy. It's not a matter of just, I hate to say it, plant one solution. All we need to do is plant a lot of trees. All we need to do is promote electric vehicles. All we need to do is promote wind turbines. It's all of the above and many, many more things. And so this is really, really hard. It's also hard because we organize our society both within government but also in academia and in our work in silos. You know, I focus on food, I focus on public health, I focus on this part of the problem, and it's very hard to get coordination across our silos of attention within government but also within academia, I hate to tell you. It's very hard to get the engineers to be coordinating with the economists, to be coordinating with the public policy folks. And it's made complicated because in the United States, we have a devolved system of government. And so that means that a big part of the challenge sits in federal jurisdiction, another part of the challenge sits in state jurisdiction, and another part of the challenge, a really important one, sits in local jurisdiction. And to get the three levels of government to coordinate on a complex challenge requires interjurisdictional and interagency coordination. And let me tell you, our government is not good at that. Neither is any government in the world, by the way. This is really, really hard to do. The good news is that this is where science can help, and sitting and charting out the pathways for what the solution might look like can help guide these conversations and stimulate this coordination that we badly need. So Sarah put these questions up earlier. Again, a lot of uncertainty in terms of how the system is going to evolve and a lot of really important questions that need answers. What exactly is the transformation that Cleveland requires to fully decarbonize by 2050? What will 2050 look like here in terms of the energy system, the transportation system, the food and land use system? How much is that going to cost? What are the jobs that are going to be lost, and what are the jobs that are going to be created? What are the public policies that can accelerate this transformation? How do we make sure that the changes and the costs of these changes don't disproportionately fall on the poor and on the marginalized communities as we've had so many times in our historical past? How do we actually do that? These are really hard questions. And this is where pathways analysis and bringing science to the table and making things specific and concrete can really, really help. SDSN began doing this in 2015 through a project that's called the Deep Decarbonization Pathways Project, or DDPP. And it's sitting down systems analysts, starting at national level for 15 countries around the world, and say, you don't come out of this room until you have a specific pathway to decarbonization for your country by 2050. Tell us exactly what that means. Which power plants come offline, when, and what are they replaced by? What are the costs? What are the uncertainties? And nobody had done that before. And it was incredibly informative in running up to the Paris negotiations that countries for the first time actually had charted out specific paths towards decarbonization. That was all at national scale. That work then continued into pushing down to regional scale within places like the United States, moving beyond the engineering analysis to actual policy analysis. So I say take from the engineers what the system will look like, but then take it to the lawyers and the constitutional experts and the economists and the policy folks and say, what are the policies that can get us onto this path that the engineers say we need to be on? That was the Zero Climate Action Plan strategy. And then take it down to the local jurisdictions. You know, I live in San Diego, California, so what we say, great, we've got national pathways, we've got a state pathway for California, but a lot of the challenge is gonna be falling upon county and city government within San Diego. They have no idea what to do. And they don't really have the bridge to be able to bring the knowledge and the pathways down from the state and federal level to see, what does this mean for my county? What does this mean for my city? Where do we need to be and by when, so that we're on a path that's compatible with what the state and the country need to be doing? So let me talk a little bit more in detail about the decarbonization pathways themselves. First, if you want to summarize, I think, what the punchline is from the engineering knowledge of the last decade working on this, is that there's just 4 things that we need to concentrate on. First, we need to electrify. I think if we want to decarbonize, a big part of what we need to do is electrify our production of energy, and then electrify everything at the end, including our vehicles, right? So that everything uses electricity, or as much uses electricity as we can. So we need to decarbonize our electricity system, move away from fossil fuels and towards renewables and other sources of energy, electrify, reduce the amount of energy we use per person and per unit of economic activity. We want to live a very comfortable and highly productive life. That's part of what, as policy experts, as economists, we want. We want people to be happy. Using energy is a part of that. We just need to figure out how to be efficient in our energy use. And finally, almost certainly in any version of the world, to actually reach 0 net emissions by mid-century, we're going to have to figure out how to sequester carbon. There are some very, very hard to decarbonize sectors that we don't quite know how we're going to get to 0. Aviation, shipping, some parts of industry, those are going to be very hard. There are technological options on there, but the like part of the agricultural sector, if we want to be emitting net 0, we probably need to be taking out some greenhouse gases from the atmosphere and figure out how to do that at scalable and cost-effective way by mid-century. So that's the 4th pillar. Why are these pathways helpful? First, they help guide debates so that debates move from the purely qualitative and aspirational to very specific and quantitative work that can help policymakers think about the trade-offs. You want this much solar power in San Diego? Okay, how much land needs to be taken offline? If you're going to produce that much utility-scale solar, what's the cost for biodiversity? What's the cost for agriculture? What's the cost in terms of other uses of land? So that policymakers are wrestling with the actual real trade-offs instead of just speaking aspirationally and with very little specificity about what needs to be done. It helps guide climate action and other policy instruments, making them specific, aligning them with mid-century goals, but also aligning them with each other. In San Diego, we have 17 jurisdictions within the county, 17 cities that by state mandate have to prepare climate action plans, all disjoint from each other. They don't talk to each other. There's no unified system vision that helps guide climate action plans at a system level. And so the cities and the towns are all working on their own, doing what they think they need to be doing, which from an engineering and a systems sense makes no sense at all. So these pathways can help with that coordination. It helps to prioritize the timing of projects. Cities and counties have a lot of good ideas for projects. It helps you prioritize and say which ones make most cost-effective sense and makes most sense in terms of the size of the carbon reduction that they bring about. It helps attract investments where, as was mentioned earlier, the IRA creates this incredibly exciting time where there is money coming down the pipeline. Local jurisdictions need to be ready with specific strategic planning, specific projects, so that we're ready to leverage all of that, those resources that are coming down for us from the federal government. And importantly, we need to, of course, prioritize and center what the effects on our communities are going to be, both salubrious effects, good things that will happen through emissions reductions, like, for example, public health co-benefits that will happen, but also potential adverse effects in terms of the costs of energy, the costs of transportation, the costs of installing rooftop solar, if that's going to be a technology that's on the table for this region, and making sure that that doesn't disproportionately fall on people with scarce resources. So we focused in general on 4 things in terms of our pathways. First, a technical analysis, actually getting this engineering pathway that I'm describing, but then moving towards an economic analysis. Let's figure out how much these different options are going to cost. What are they going to mean in terms of jobs lost and jobs created? A geospatial analysis for us. We actually in San Diego, given the importance of the solar solution for our region of the country, need to figure out what that means for our land use in Southern California. So a geospatial analysis was critical for us, but it's also important, of course, for the transportation sector and for lots of other pieces of this puzzle. And finally, bring in the lawyers and the policy experts, figure out what are the regulatory instruments that need to be brought to bear to put us on these pathways. What exactly is a pathway? So it's a blueprint for the energy system that reaches a future target, let's say 0 by 2050. It's not a forecast. It's not what we think is going to happen. It's reverse engineering the future that we want, or backcasting the future that we want, and figuring out what are the different paths that we have as options to get us there. That's what a pathway analysis does. They're clear, they're science-based, and they're comprehensive, and they tell you what technologies are required, in what amounts, what are the investments, what are the policies, and they're importantly long-term, right? So they're to 2050 or even later in some cases, and the value of that is that a lot of the financial decisions that we'll make as a society, particularly on infrastructure, will have a lifespan that lasts for decades. Kind of new boilers bought today or heating systems will last for decades. New pipelines that are laid down, new pieces of infrastructure laid down will have a commercial lifespan of 40 or 50 years. And so you have to be planning on that time horizon if you're gonna make good decisions today. And importantly, they help us know whether the short-term targets we're setting, whether it's inside a climate action plan or some other policy aspiration that we're setting in a more short term, is actually compatible with the longer-term path that we need to take to zero. Right. They're really helpful for things like avoiding dead ends. What's a dead end? A large investment that you make that reduces some of your emissions now, but actually can't get you down to zero, right? So that's what we call dead end strategies, which are a tragic loss of resources. Identifying commonalities across potential pathways. As I said, there's a lot of technological uncertainty in terms of what technologies will come online and at what cost over the next few decades. Well, we can model different possibilities. We don't know which one of those will come to bear, but we do know by looking at all of these different potential visions of the future, which are the investments we need to make today that are a good idea, regardless of how that long-term uncertainty resolves itself. So electrifying our energy system is a good idea in every scenario. Moving towards electric vehicles is a good idea in every scenario. Some of the other things, we'll have to see how technology and costs evolve. But identifying that low-hanging fruit of what things are good ideas for decarbonization, regardless of what scenario we move on, is great. Situating near-term policy targets so that they're compatible with the trajectory that you want in the long term, and identifying, especially for policymakers, what are the key decision points. By when do we have to make sure that building owners are not replacing end-of-life boilers with a fossil fuel alternative, for example? Because if they invest in a boiler today, it's going to be around for 30 or 40 years, and you don't want to strand that capital asset before its natural end of life. That's very expensive to do. And so that kind of analysis tells us, okay, we need to move quickly on something like boilers. Other things, we have a bit more time to work on. So in San Diego was the first time that we at SDSN focused on a more local challenge in terms of decarbonization. These regional models are very helpful to bring these global and national commitments down to fit the local questions and the local needs. We provided our policymakers, in our case our main audience was the San Diego County Board of Supervisors, the elected officials that run the county, with technical pathways to decarbonization. They ensure that whatever's being done in San Diego is coherent with what's happening in the state of California and coherent within what's happening nationally. And it helps with the fact that energy systems are interconnected within San Diego, and so our 17 local jurisdictions within the county now have a single articulated system that we can debate and talk about, but that can then inform the 17 climate action plans that need to be written. We provided technical roadmaps linking the energy transition with the geospatial planning. We focused a lot on workforce development, so we actually quantified how many jobs would be lost, how many jobs would be created, and then a large effort to figure out what early retirement programs, workforce redevelopment programs, what are the policy options we have working together with our organized labor community in terms of thinking about what decarbonization means for our labor force. And we learned a few things that I thought I'd just end on in terms of our ideas to help inform some of the conversations that are beginning here in Cleveland. First, we focus on proved and scalable technologies, right? That means that technologies that are still
kind of aspirational, they're in pilot phase, they may or may not work. That's not what this project is about. What this project is about is we have a set of technologies that exist, that we know work, that can be deployed at scale. So let's figure out how jurisdictions can put these technologies, and again, do that first 25, 50, 80% of decarbonization. We can do that with the technologies that exist at scale now and are deployable now. We don't wait for fusion to come online to solve this problem. This isn't a project that figures out how we're going to use wave energy or microwave energy from space. That's not what this is about. This is about using the technologies that are on the table and helping policymakers think about how to deploy them. As I've said before, we present multiple ways forward. Our job as scientists is not to provide the answer here, because we don't know what the answer is. What we can provide are multiple pathways forward that highlight for society the trade-offs, the co-benefits, the key decision points, the risks, and the synergies across different kinds of investments so that society can figure out what makes most sense. We emphasize the need for ongoing planning and innovation because technologies will change, the science will change, costs will change. Whatever we articulate now as a sensible pathway for the jurisdiction may look different in 10 or 15 years. And so there's this will be work in progress, and the jurisdiction needs to figure out a way so that the science is continuously being updated, and then the policy processes are going back to that updated science and continually updating themselves in terms of figuring out the pathway that they want to follow. As I've said earlier, a key point, identify for the policymakers what are the low regret policies and investments that are going to be a good idea regardless of how the future uncertainty resolves itself. What are those low regret investments for Cleveland? Centralize equity as a core principle. That's absolutely critical in terms of obviously getting political support across all constituencies, but acknowledge from the beginning that this is a transition. And so some folks will have a very different life on a decarbonized future. Let's figure out how many people we're talking about, what are the labor consequences, what are the costs of energy consequences, and from the beginning, center equity as an important piece of the puzzle here that we need to focus on. Create a collaborative planning consortium, right? So this can't just be centered in one agency, in one branch of government. This has to be something that spans different branches of government, together with the private sector, together with the advocacy community, together with academics, and all of those different pieces of knowledge have to be brought to bear on the problem. Nevertheless, identify who the lead agency is going to be, right? Somebody has to own this and help coordinate that. It's not always abundantly clear who that is. So in San Diego, is it the city? Is it the county? We have a metropolitan planning agency. Is that the most natural jurisdictional body to help coordinate the different jurisdictions? It's not always so clear how to get this to work for everyone. And finally, communicate from the beginning that the results from this kind of pathways work is not prescriptive. It's not the answer that Cleveland is going to take. We've solved Cleveland's problems, and we know exactly what we need to do for the next 35 years to decarbonize. That's not going to be the result of the scientific work that we're all embarking on now. All we're doing is demonstrating what the trade-offs are, trying to put numbers and quantities and specificities, but acknowledging that this is all work that's going to be evolving. So I'm extraordinarily excited to see about the work that's going to happen this afternoon. We'll start by looking at the Ohio region inside the national model so that we can start thinking about where energy is likely to come from for this part of our country, and have that inform the specificities of what needs to happen in the city of Cleveland in terms of its decarbonization challenges. So I'm genuinely excited about the work that we're doing here, and I congratulate the city for that. The next step is a video from the president of the Sustainable Development Solutions Network. He's a Columbia professor and economist, Jeffrey Sachs, who couldn't join us in person. He's also been advisor to multiple secretaries general of the United Nations on sustainable development, and he just wanted to share a few words with us. So.
Thank you, Professor McCord. Everybody, thank you for the round of applause. We're going to start the video in just a second.
Hello, I'm Jeffrey Sachs, University Professor at Columbia University and President of the United Nations Sustainable Development Solutions Network. I'm really honored, overjoyed to be part of Cleveland's Decarbonization Summit. And Mayor Bibb, thank you so much for your leadership. Your leadership in Cleveland is exemplary. Your leadership for the U.S. Conference of Mayors as Vice Chair of the Climate and Resilience Committee is crucial for our entire nation. And I know that many Cleveland leaders have been part of establishing this crucial summit. I'd also like to pay special thanks to Deepa Vedavayas of the Cleveland Foundation and Grant Goodrich of Case Western Reserve. And while I'm at it, I want to thank my two colleagues, co-chairs of the United States chapter of the Sustainable Development Solutions Network, Helen Bond of Howard University, and Gordon McCord of University of California, San Diego. Thanks to all of you for calling for and helping to establish and now to present Cleveland's Decarbonization Summit. I know that the purpose of this Decarbonization Summit is to engage the Cleveland community and the larger community of Ohio and the Midwest in the great challenge of decarbonization, especially so the people of Cleveland can make the most of this need and important opportunity. So the summit aims to help the public to understand what this decarbonization challenge is all about. Let me say that in the last couple of weeks, I have been in China, and I've been in India, now I'm in Europe, and in all of those visits, I am seeing decarbonization in action. China is mobilizing the entire society of 1.4 billion people to this decarbonization challenge. India is making massive strides now in photovoltaics, that is solar power, in digitalization of the economy, also with the aim of a modern zero carbon energy system for India. And this is happening all over the world. So what the Cleveland Decarbonization Summit is about is helping Cleveland to be part of and indeed to be a leader of decarbonization. What is decarbonization? Decarbonization means a deep transformation of the world's energy system. It has to be worldwide because we need to move from a fossil fuel-based energy system, coal, natural gas, petroleum, that did bring us the modern world that was the basis of industrialization in the 19th and 20th centuries, to an energy system based on zero carbon sources. Could be wind, could be solar, could be hydro, it could be nuclear in some places, but all of these sources are zero carbon. Why move from fossil fuels to these alternatives? Why take this big challenge on? Well, because the fossil fuels, when they are combusted, when they burn, produce carbon dioxide, and CO2 has been increasing in the atmosphere, and it just happens by bad luck that it is a greenhouse gas, meaning that it traps Earth's infrared energy and thereby warms the planet. It acts like a greenhouse. Instead of our infrared energy of Earth radiating out to space, it gets trapped by this layer of carbon dioxide and a few other greenhouse gases, notably methane, largely from natural gas, as well as some other sources, nitrous oxide, and some fluorine chemical industrial gases. All of these trap the Earth's heat and are warming the planet, and we've already had warming now compared to the pre-industrial average temperature of 1.2 degrees Celsius. That may not sound like a lot, but it has already made the Earth's temperature warmer than at any time in the past 10,000 years. That is during the entire history of civilization. And it is leading to massive climate disasters in all parts of the world. Droughts, floods, heat waves, sea level rise, increased intensity, hurricanes, and many, many other dire visitations that are costing lives, forcing mass migrations of populations, creating economic devastation, and threatening us with some runaway disasters. We could hit tipping points which would lead to a multi-meter rise of oceans as the ice sheets of Antarctica and Greenland melt. We could kill the rainforests off by the warming leading to a drying of the rainforest and thereby releasing all that carbon stored in the vegetation. We could melt, and are melting, the permafrost in the boreal regions, in Siberia and other high latitude regions. And when that permafrost melts, that will release its own CO2 and methane that is trapped under the ice level. All of this is to say, we're facing a dire emergency, and the world knows it. The world has therefore adopted the goal desperately to keep the warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius, and we're at the last moments when we can do this. And what the scientists tell us clearly is that to succeed in doing that, we must decarbonize the energy system by mid-century. Now, Cleveland, you're taking on the challenge. Mayor Bibb, thank you for leading in this challenge. What does it mean in practice? It means that the power, the electricity that powers Cleveland and that powers Ohio and that powers the Midwest needs to be from sunshine, needs to be from wind, needs to be from hydropower. It can't be from the old sources anymore. It means we need to build a new green hydrogen economy where hydrogen is burned, which burns cleanly. It doesn't produce CO2, it produces water when it burns. But the hydrogen needs to be produced from clean green sources, solar, wind power, and other zero carbon energy sources. It means we need to transform to electric vehicles, as I think everybody understands now. It means we need greater efficiency in our buildings. It means we need to save on energy use by shifting more to public transport. Now, another thing that it means is new industries to produce photovoltaics, new industries to produce wind turbines, new industries to produce long-distance transmission systems for renewable energy, new industries based on smart digital governed infrastructure. And who is going to produce that new industrial economy? I hope it's the American Midwest. And by the way, I'm from Detroit. We're neighbors. So I want Detroit and Cleveland and Pittsburgh and the heartland of American industry to be a leader in this. Fortunately, we have new legislation. We have the IRA, the so-called Inflation Reduction Act, which is really a decarbonization law. We have the CHIPS legislation for advanced semiconductors. We have the bipartisan infrastructure legislation for rebuilding infrastructure. What makes Cleveland's Decarbonization Summit so important is that Cleveland has a chance to tap into all of those incentives built into the infrastructure laws, to the Inflation Reduction Act tax credits, to the new CHIPS legislation. And Cleveland has the brain power at Case Western Reserve, at Cleveland State University, at Kent State University, at OSU, and other universities of Ohio to lead this transformation. So I'm a born and raised Midwesterner. I want to see Cleveland and Detroit and Pittsburgh and the rest of the Midwest region lead. I see that China's moving. I see that India's moving. It's time for the United States to move. That is the purpose of Cleveland's Decarbonization Summit. I'm very proud and very honored to be part of it. Once again, Mayor Bibb, thank you so much for your leadership in Cleveland and across the nation. Thanks to all the leaders of Cleveland for making the Decarbonization Summit such an important event. And thank you again for inviting me to be a participant.
Okay, our many thanks to Jeffrey Sachs, who could not join us today, for that recorded video, and to his team from SDSN USA who are here and will be with us this afternoon. So I just wanted to recap a little bit. We heard from Deepa Vedyavas about the global picture, UN Sustainable Development Goals. We heard from Gordon McCord about current technologies and using them in pathways for decarbonization at the regional level. And we heard from Jeffrey Sachs about the opportunity for new technologies, the global picture, innovation, the IRA, the CHIPS Act, all the funding that's available, and leading in the Midwest. And that's what we're aiming to do here in Greater Cleveland. And on that point, I would like to introduce some leaders, very local leaders here in Greater Cleveland, from the Cleveland Environmental Advocacy Coalition, to speak about centering equity when pursuing decarbonization and other actions on climate change. First, we have Jennifer Lumpkin, Local Partnerships Manager from Cleveland Alliance for the Great Lakes. Jennifer is a community organizer and supporter in coalitions and efforts from across the city of Cleveland, currently working on behalf of the Alliance for the Great Lakes at the Cleveland Partnerships Manager. I already said that twice. It's just important to note. Her organizing and partnership practice is rooted in supporting the development of sustainable communities through creative relationship building, cultural organizing, and mindful resource connections. Jennifer is the co-lead for the Cleveland Environmental Advocacy Coalition. Emily Baca, Vice President of Public Affairs for the Ohio Environmental Council, leads the organization's strategic communications and local advocacy efforts to secure healthy air, clean water, vibrant public lands, and a strong democracy for all who call Ohio home, or all who want to return to Ohio. She is passionate about working with community members, partners, and leaders across the state to advance strong environmental justice and climate action policies. She previously served as the Cleveland Leadership Center Board of Trustees, and is a resident of Cleveland, enjoys exploring the region's incredible parks as well as shores of Lake Erie and family and friends. Both of these individuals and leaders are extraordinary women who are helping us achieve equity in climate action and other environmental legacy issues. Please welcome them as they give you a presentation on centering equity as we pursue decarbonization pathways.
Thank you, Sarah, for the warm welcome, and we'll start with Emily leading, and I'll round us off with some questions.
Thanks, Jen. Good morning, everyone. From the air we breathe, to the water we drink, to the parks we love to explore, we know that Ohioans care about our environment. But more than that, a majority of Ohioans are concerned about climate change and support policies, especially equitable policies, that transition us away from polluting fossil fuels to a clean energy future. In comparison to the rest of the Buckeye State, the support for that climate action is increased here in Cuyahoga County. And this is not a surprise, given Cleveland's role in the environmental movement, and specifically the environmental justice movement. On the shores of the Cuyahoga River, the environmental movement really got started. And the residents of Cleveland and the community leaders that worked on those initial policies from the Clean Water Act and beyond, that momentum is here in the room right now with all of you. So Jen and I and my colleague Brian Siggers, who's at the table over here as our Cleveland Metro Advocacy Director, we are so delighted to work with so many organizations as part of the Cleveland Environmental Advocacy Coalition. The logos that you see here on the screen are just a smattering of the organizations who have worked with our organizations over the last 3 years to put together policy platforms and guidance for the city, for the county, and engaging residents along the way in this work. If you're a member of one of these organizations who's helped us think about forward-looking equitable policy, can you please stand? I see a couple of you. There we go.
Yes.
There we go.
Stand up, Divya, Robin.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
And if you work on policy pieces, can you also wave your hand? Because I think that that's important to understand who else is working on policy and how we can work together. So a little bit of background, I talked about policy platforms, and in 2020, there were more than 20 organizations that came together to put together the first Cleveland Comprehensive Environmental Policy Platform that really drew on multiple disciplines in order to think through comprehensive environmental policy and what that could look like for Cleveland moving forward. And I want to note that that work was really drawing on connections between the intersections of race, health, income, wealth, climate change, drinking water, healthy waterways, transportation, food access. And that's important because we need to think about the intersections of policies in order to address our most pressing and most complex environmental issues here in Cleveland. A number of organizations came together again last year to develop a policy platform for the new county administration as well, really building on the policy work that we've done. And these policy platforms really serve as a guidepost for local and regional elected officials as we think about so many of these pieces moving forward. There's great alignment with the Sustainable Development Goals that we've heard a lot about this morning. And so Jen and I are here to talk through, what are the connections with the policy platforms and these Sustainable Development Goals. We want to highlight the amazing organizations that are doing this work on a daily basis. And we want to ask a couple really important questions that will help guide you in your work, not only today, but in your work moving forward. And again, welcome you to be part of our policy discussions as we work together too. So a few highlights from the policy platforms to talk through and these connections. So when we talk about infrastructure and transportation, we know that in order to achieve equitable decarbonization, and in order to inspire folks to choose alternative forms of transportation, decision makers need to improve the infrastructure for people who already use these alternative modes. And we need to think about the future as well. We need to promote safety, encourage commuters to bike, walk, and take public transits. Perhaps not a surprise for many of you, one of the great leaders on this work here in Cleveland is Bike Cleveland, and we're really excited to work with Jacob and Jenna and so many folks to advance many of the policy recommendations that are in the platform documents. And so an example of some of those policy recommendations include developing a citywide multimodal transportation plan. There's a couple bullet points that you see here, and since we launched the platform in 2020, in close work with the BIB administration, we've seen wins and we've seen a lot of progress on pieces. So want to call out the fact that we have an updated Complete and Green Streets ordinance that was passed last year. That is really, really exciting. And that, yep, I see some claps, that's good. We should celebrate our wins on these pieces. And I think that there's other good work that is happening as well. But when we think about supporting equitable decarbonization, we need to know that our work in practice, that these policy solutions are helping support the decarbonization as well as other goals. These help us achieve improved health outcomes through reduced emissions, promoting economic growth, and increased transportation connectivity. There we go. And when it comes to the built environments, There are a number of recommendations in the policy platforms that address remediating lead paint and removing lead service lines. These are really important issues that you heard Mayor Bibb speak about earlier today. And while these recommendations may not seem like they are specifically supporting equitable decarbonization, there's intersections here that are really, really important. There's great opportunity to address these policy needs in tandem with our equitable decarbonization goals. If we're increasing the energy efficiency of a home and looking at those pieces, we can also think about replacing lead service lines, remediating lead paint. Again, shout out to our amazing local advocacy leaders on this, Black environmental leaders, Seacole, Red House Studios. Robin is here and is excited to talk with anyone about this work, and it's a conversation worth having for sure. So example of a platform recommendation in practice here, again, thinking through efficient materials, increasing efficient material use and repurposing of lands. As we think through the major funding that's coming in related to our climate goals, we should be mindful of this. That again, utilizing those funds to have a cumulative impact on our work when it comes to addressing multiple pieces. And a great example of this is the BioCycler project as well. Working through slides quickly here. I think that when we are thinking through our buildings, deep dives that are happening later today, our circular manufacturing deep dives that are happening later today, we can talk through some of those pieces related to the cumulative benefits, but land and green spaces is another really important aspect of this. And so there's no shortage of natural infrastructure and nature-based solutions that we can pursue to advance equitable decarbonization goals. And I know that there are a lot of folks who are part of another coalition here in town, the Cleveland Tree Coalition. And shout out to the Tree Coalition for advocating for equitable tree canopy across the city for years now, and we're seeing good progress. Again, want to shout out the importance of the reinstatement of the Urban Forestry Commission and the work that they're doing. One of our policy recommendations from the platform explicitly called out the need for equitable investments in Cleveland tree canopy, and we're excited to see progress on this work across the city. We know that when we're pursuing tree canopy work across the city, when we're planting trees, maintaining our trees, we are not only increasing carbon capture and sequestration, but we're also reducing energy needs for heating and cooling. There's really important work to be done here that helps lift a lot of needs. And so speaking to one of the last policy recommendations examples in today's quick presentation, the policy platform is quite meaty, and we encourage you to check it out, is looking at energy and air quality. And so as the clean energy revolution takes hold across the globe, Cleveland is poised to really be a leader in this work in responding to climate change and accelerating our transition away from fossil fuels. But that's going to take intentionality and take us thinking through a number of different policy solutions. Local advocacy leaders from Cleveland Owns, the Citizens Utility Board of Ohio, Solar United Neighbors. I know Dan and Tristan are here. They're doing this work day in and day out and addressing really important energy policy solutions. And so some examples of work from the policy platform that are in action and in progress relate to supporting a locally generated clean energy economy and reducing energy burden. We have a really unique opportunity to combat climate change and reduce air pollution through the tools that we have at the City of Cleveland, including a municipal utility, a smart climate action plan, and community choice aggregation. And we can build upon the city's progress and embrace greater innovation, greater equity in this work by really focusing in on these issues. You've heard a little bit about the low to moderate income solar program. That's one example of promoting policy that is helping us make that transition to the clean energy economy while also addressing energy burden. Ensuring a just transition means that we have to do things a bit differently. I think that includes reducing that high energy burden for so many of our Cleveland residents. And just a few examples of that here. And as we close out the presentation, I think that there's a lot that we can think through about these co-benefits, about policy levers that we can be pressing at the city level, at the county level, that we can be advocating for in our work across the city. And so there's questions to guide that work, especially going into these afternoon sessions. And Jen's done a really good job of putting these together and can highlight those now.
Thanks, Emily. I just want to start by saying these questions weren't just formulated from my own mind. I spoke with elders, I spoke with folks in the community, I spoke with professional coaches and people who've been doing this work for a long time. They know who they are, they're in this room. So in thinking about these questions, there are going to be some more that pop up, but primarily just focusing on the term decarbonization. What does it mean to our communities? I have to admit, I did not know what that term meant when Director O'Keefe first brought it up. She asked us, did we know? And we were a little bit, stumped. So we have to ask ourselves that question. What does it mean to our communities, and with whom does this term actually resonate with? And how do our communities feel and experience the effects of a high carbon environment? That's a real question that I have. Like, what does it actually feel like for them to understand what decarbonization will mean, and what does it feel like right now? What does it actually mean to have a high carbon environment? What are the health and life implications of a high carbon environment, and how are we working in the built environment with residents to reduce the burden through our city and county budgets? So a specific tactile example of this is working in sync with electrification and also mitigating the effects of lead service lines and having lead remediation happen at the same time, contiguously, making sure that timing makes sense so that money is spent efficiently. And then also, who owns the infrastructure for decarbonization? And is this work informed and mutually shared by the people in places most affected? So, like many sectors, folks may have a head start, right, in setting up a small business, setting up a social entrepreneurship. So how can we make sure that everyone's able to participate, right, at the same level, an equitable way, so that we're all able to contribute, right, to decarbonization and improving our communities? So I'll just leave you with that, and, we have more. Oh, okay. How do we implement and manage the work of decarbonization and electrification while repairing the compounding issues and intersections faced by risk-averse communities? So yes, this is the example that I was just naming. And thinking about doing these things as far as like a capital planning investment, right? Making sure that we're actually tackling multiple issues at one time. Are we streamlining solutions to occur in sync to repair multiple harms caused by environmental injustice and rapid climate change? Again, lead removal or mitigation while electrifying homes. What are the health and wellness indicators for populations experiencing transitional development? And are we prioritizing capital investments, monitoring improvements and implementation based on the communities most affected? Thank you so much, everyone, for listening to our presentation. Again, if you have any questions, I'm Jennifer Lumpkin. You can reach me right here in my email, jlumpkin@greatlakes.org. We meet every month, the first Thursday, and you can also contact my co-lead, Brian Siggers, right here to the left at the table with his hands up. And thank you again for your time and willingness to learn more about our work and the work of our partners. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody. I just want to recognize that we are providing you a lot of information, and we don't have an opportunity just right now until we have the youth panel for Q&A, and that will be specific to the youth panel. However, we do have email addresses of all of the individuals who are speaking here today, so if you have a specific question and want feedback on that, please email sustainability@clevelandohio.gov, and we will connect you with the speaker for whom you have a question, or if you just have a general question. Again, that's sustainability@clevelandohio.gov. We also have links on our website, sustainablecleveland.org, and a little bit later, we will talk about this in closing remarks, but just so for you in the room now, we will have a review of all of this information in a virtual meeting about a month from now to 6 weeks. Every single one of you will get an invitation to that virtual meeting where we'll summarize the public convening this morning and the afternoon sessions as well. So switching gears, bicycle gears, by the way, we would like to bring up Northeast Ohio Climate Reality Project, a local chapter of a global group whose stated mission is to catalyze a global solution to the climate crisis by making urgent action a necessity across every sector of society. And I would like to welcome on stage Angela Yeager, Dick Coyne, and Elena Statue. Angela is a native of Lorain, Ohio, and director of Laurel's Environmental Justice Semester, where she inspires, supports, and encourages the next generation of youth change makers. Dick Coyne is the co-chair of Northeast Ohio Climate Reality Project, a retired chemical engineer and founding member of Green Energy Ohio, and member of Third Act and Sierra Club. And with his wife, Cindy, electrified their home 100%. You're gonna hear more about that in a minute. Elena Statue, a Cleveland resident, is also a part of the Northeast Ohio Strategy Consultant for Power a Clean Future Ohio, and Director of Operations and Lead of Sustainability Environment for Citadel Impact Consulting, and as a curator of the Cleveland Hub of Global Shapers. So I welcome all three of them for this next presentation on their work, the Climate Reality Project. Please welcome them.
Hi, everyone. Let me move this up a bit. There we go. My name is Elena Statue, and I'm joined by my two colleagues, Angela Yeager and Dick Coyne. We are trained climate reality leaders through the Climate Reality Project and are part of the Northeast Ohio chapter. We want to thank the City of Cleveland for the opportunity to speak to you all today. For those that aren't familiar, the Climate Reality Project, or CRP, was founded by former U.S. Vice President Al Gore, seen here in the center of this photo. Because of CRP's mission to make urgent climate action a necessity and really a way of life, CRP leaders represent different sectors of society and contribute their own lived experiences to the work. CRP has recruited, trained, and mobilized over 50,000 leaders since 2006. Angela and myself were trained just last year in Houston with a specific focus on halting petrochemical expansion in the Gulf South. In this presentation, we will address three questions. Must we decarbonize? Can we decarbonize? And will we decarbonize? I will start with the first question. I'm particularly excited to address this question because of my hopefully soon-to-be finished PhD in biomimicry with a focus in coastal restoration and ecology. So fingers crossed that I actually do this soon. And my work with Power Clean Future Ohio, of course, working with communities across Northeast Ohio and decarbonization. So let's start here with this image of Earth, our home. This thin little atmosphere is what makes our planet hospitable and why we are all here, and how we treat it matters. Now we know the impacts of climate change are wide-ranging, from floods, drought, infectious disease, to infrastructure loss, political instability, and climate refugees. I won't touch on any of those, but what I will touch on are the changes that we see happening in Greater Cleveland today. So let's orient ourselves toward home. We start with the major ecoregions of the United States. I love the outdoors and appreciate that Ohio is uniquely positioned at the intersection of three ecoregions, which includes the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains to the beginnings of the tallgrass prairie, in addition to our glacial history. Next, we see just Ohio, with Cleveland at the intersection of another subset of three ecoregions. You can follow the Cuyahoga River from the red star along the blue gradation you see on the map there. Then we have Cleveland within the larger Lake Erie watershed. I use these images to visualize our unique ecological history and landscape. Being at the intersection of multiple ecoregions means we have a high biodiversity of species. Some call specific places home, like ancient bogs and fens, so they're particularly sensitive to the effects of climate change, while other species exist along the transitions between ecoregions and ecosystem types, perhaps faring a little bit better with disturbance. Some ecosystems and species are unique to this region only and nowhere else in the world. So once they're gone forever. So we must take care of our home to ensure a good quality of life for ourselves as humans, but also the other species that share this place with us. So let's start with Lake Erie. How many of you like to swim, boat, or fish in Lake Erie like me? You can raise your hand. Well, we must decarbonize to protect the health of our lake. I think many of us are all too familiar with images like this one, a harmful algal bloom in the western Lake Erie Basin, warmer surface water temperatures over a longer season, and extreme precipitation events that cause an influx of sediment and nutrients are two conditions that allow for algal blooms to persist longer and grow larger. And while algal blooms are natural and not all are toxic, like in the case of the Toledo drinking water crisis of 2014, longer and larger non-toxic algal blooms can still facilitate large low oxygen events that kill off fish that we enjoy catching off our city piers, parks, and on boats. For those with lakefront property, we must decarbonize to increase the resiliency and safety of our coastlines. We know our lake does not freeze over as often as it used to, nor is there significant and consistent ice buildup, which protects our coastlines in the winter months. When the ice is gone, this can cause destructive erosion, such as what can be seen in Geneva in February of 2020. Their township park lost 45 feet of land in 10 days, which is crazy. And while we don't have sea level rise, we do experience higher water levels due to more precipitation, which can cause even more destructive erosion due to higher waves crashing along the shore. We also must decarbonize to protect the health of our trees, such as that of our beloved sugar maple. When people talk about Vermont maple syrup, I talk about Ohio maple syrup. But rising temperatures bring an earlier sap flow, shorter sugaring season, invasive insects, and lower sugar content. In the early spring, the right combination of cold nights and warm days helps create pressures in the inside of the tree to pull the sap upward. So the more erratic the weather, the more difficulty the tree will have, and the more difficult it will be to tap. This graphic shows that maple syrup production will actually no longer be viable in Ohio in the coming years, as the trees will move northward. I don't know about you, but every year I know spring is on its way when I hear spring peepers at dusk, and after several nights of warm rain, I try to witness the salamanders and frogs emerging from winter to breed. Erratic spring weather patterns contribute to the loss of these amphibian species each year. Bird watchers may notice that songbird migration timing is off with warmer temperatures. Fall springs trick plants into flowering early and trick birds into migrating sooner. Spring heat waves also endanger young birds in the nest. Rising lake levels flood coastal habitat that is important to nesting birds, such as that of the tundra swan, and our beloved September monarch butterfly migrations that we see each year at Whiskey Island and Wendy Park are also sensitive to weather and climate. I think most obviously we all know we must decarbonize to protect the health of ourselves and fellow neighbors. Climate change has been declared a medical emergency among health professionals, and chronic disease and mental health diagnoses are on the rise. This image shows EPA's environmental justice screening and mapping tool, visualizing our region, showing which communities bear the burden of environmental harms and socioeconomic disadvantage. Those in red have a higher burden, while those in green less so. I highly recommend you take time to check out and use this online tool if you haven't. If we zoom to the Greater Cleveland area, our frontline communities are located near current or former industrial facilities and also interstate highways. There's an obvious tie here to air quality and cancer risk, and our air quality can be impacted from events all the way across the country. As this photo of the New York City skyline shows, so this thick haze was created by smoke from the fires in the western US in July 2021, and research suggests that smoke may become more toxic the farther it travels and longer it stays in the air. So you'll notice with these examples that while warmer temperatures and erratic weather patterns are only two factors that play into these complex ecological and public health challenges, decarbonization will in turn help reduce the magnitude of these catalysts, both temperature and weather, that significantly worsen these crises. So hopefully some of you realize that yes, EVs and electrifying transportation will help our lake, our salamanders, birds, and butterflies, and our own human health. It's all connected. I'll leave you with this quote before I turn it over to Dick, which reads, "Climate change is a threat to human well-being and planetary health. There is a rapidly closing window of opportunity to secure a livable and sustainable future for all. The choices and actions implemented in this decade will have impacts now and for thousands of years."
Good morning. My name, again, is Dick Coyne, and I received my CRP training in Chicago in 2013. A lot has happened in the last 10 years, a lot more has to happen in the next 10. The answer to this question is a resounding yes. And the people in this room are going to make it happen. Let's talk a little bit about the Cleveland area. Well, you've already talked about it. I mean, I wanted to highlight that Cleveland was the first city in Ohio to set a climate action plan that required 100% clean energy by 2050. That's just one of many goals that have been set here in Cleveland. And let's take a look at a little bit more at some of the solutions and the resources that are available here. Land-based and solar farms, land-based wind and solar farms are rapidly growing in Ohio. This helps decarbonize the grid and provides jobs and tax revenues. That's just one of the renewable energy sources that are coming online and growing. Wind turbines in Lake Erie will produce renewable energy and put Cleveland front and center on decarbonization efforts, providing Ohio the opportunity to become a national leader in the emerging offshore wind industry. We talked about the resources that are available here, and they go back quite a ways. Cleveland is noted for innovation in manufacturing. The first power-generating wind turbine was built in Cleveland, and the NASA Glenn Research Center led in the development of large horizontal axis wind turbines. They've been marketed all over the world because NASA made this technology available. First Solar is an Ohio-based company that manufactures solar panels. They provide energy security and supply chain continuity, reducing our dependence on China, which we have seen can be a problem at times. Everything used to generate renewable energy can be manufactured here in Cleveland. We can also decarbonize our homes. And here's an example of how my wife Cindy and I did it in 2005. We installed solar panels and a wind turbine. From then until now, we added more solar panels, stopped burning fossil fuels, and totally decarbonized our home, cooking, heating, and cooling, transportation, yard and garden tools. Today, renewable energy provides 80 to 90% of the energy we need. When we began the transition, the technologies were expensive, and there were few companies and trades that provided support. The engineering background helped at times. Today, support is available to design, manufacture, decarbonize, maintain. All of the trades are available today. All you have to do basically is pick up the phone. And the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA, is available to make it economical. Typically, people don't know details about the IRA. And here's how you can get some of those details. If you Google Inflation Reduction Act calculator, you can get a screen like this. You can put in some information, very little, and you may have already seen this. And it gives you the discounts, the credits, and the savings that you could achieve. It's an overall summary. But there's also two interactive tables that allow you to get up-to-date information on each of the incentives that are available. Typically, people are familiar with tax rebates for electric cars and solar panels, but others like heat pump water heaters and heat pump dryers, electrification upgrades of your home, These are less well known, and I think one of the ones that's coming down the pipe that a lot of people would be interested in is a $4,000 reduction in the price of used electric vehicles that is coming next year. Informing and educating the public and politicians is a key factor in decarbonization. Education is critical. The public and our government officials need to understand climate change and how we can fight it. Just a couple of years ago, I was meeting with a politician in Columbus, a senator, and he told me nobody that had spoken to the Ohio Senate believed climate change was real. We thought that was worth repeating. Nobody that had spoken to the Ohio Senate believed climate change was real. This must change. Our youth need to be told the truth. Fossil fuel funding, climate denial must be stopped. We all need to learn how we can take actions. All of this has to be done with fairness and equity, leaving no one behind. This year, a genetic clone of me and a dinosaur, actually not a live dinosaur because we don't have any anymore, so it was frozen dinosaur cells, helped with the 14th annual Master Gardener presentation describing the IRA. And my wife and I give tours at our home to local 8th grade and high school students through the Arthur Holden Leadership Institute and the Hershey Montessori School. I also give a yearly talk at John's Country Nursery Bee Festival in Middlefield, rather red area of the state, so I think it's important. As co-chairs of Northeast Ohio Climate Reality, my daughter Cassandra Sweeney and I offer monthly Zoom meetings to approximately 150 members, and right now there's a training going on. 8,000 potential and existing members are currently going through power-up training on the IRA. My daughter has spoken at Tri-C, Washington State, and Hawaii, soon in Cambridge, on climate change education. She is a PhD candidate at Cleveland State. Title of her thesis is Age-Related Experiences in Environmental Advocacy Qualitative Research Project. I could not be more proud. We are committed to getting the word out, opening the conversation, and encouraging the neighbor effect to fight climate change. In conclusion, my dinosaur friend said, don't choose extinction. And we here are saying, choose decarbonization. Thank you.
So again, my name is Angela Yeager. I'm from Laurel School's new environmental justice semester, and I'm honored to be sharing the next few minutes with you. So we know that we can decarbonize. We have those solutions. But the question really is, will we decarbonize? And that is up to each and every one of you in the room here. And I have to warn you, I'm a teacher, so there might be some class participation. But in the interest of honoring our elders and ancestors, I want to introduce you to Arbutus Baker. This is my grandmother, and she was a self-proclaimed hillbilly who taught me everything I know about sustainability before it was cool. She had a house full of useful items that never ran out, a garden full of medicinal plants, and she was full of tidbits of words of wisdom, one of which I'll share with you, and you may know it. It is to be the change. Do you know that one? Repeat after me. Be the change. We can do better. Be the change. Yes, gold star, thank you. Thank you for that, teachers. Okay, so really whether or not we decarbonize depends on whether or not we can be the change fast enough. This quote's fitting for our climate moment, and we need to do this now. So I get to work with the next generation, and one thing that they are teaching me is that they are nervous. They are nervous, and 70% of students globally are nervous about climate change. And this brings me to Grandma Baker's second piece of wisdom, which is to leave it better than you found it. Yeah, I heard some of you, good. You had grandmas too, I see. So I think we can agree we are not doing well enough at this. We are not leaving it better than we found it. We are consuming too much energy, too much stuff, especially too much plastic, which, by the way, that's another issue. Once we decarbonize, the fossil fuel industry's plan is to just turn all of their expired product into more plastic. So that's for another conversation. But Vice President Al Gore likes to remind us of the first law of digging holes, and that is, stop digging the hole. We have to stop digging ourselves into a hole of carbonization. There's no such thing as decarbonizing too fast. Communities have solutions. I want to share a student solution right here. This is in Champaign County, Ohio, and this is a student-led solar effort. I was lucky enough to hear 2 local students student groups talking at Teaching Cleveland with this very solution for their schools. We have to support this work. I know many of you in these technical sessions are going to go and figure out how to support all of these fantastic local organizations that have been up here all day. Let's support their solutions. This is not all of them, right? So climate change is an environmental justice issue, we know. If we don't decarbonize, we know it's going to be Black, brown, indigenous, impoverished communities that suffer first and worst. And we must have a talk about this just transition, right? What we're asking is a values shift from an extractive economy on the left to a regenerative economy on the right that really focuses on clean, renewable energy, climate resilience, and safe and affordable housing. And we need to start this transition in the communities that have been historically divested in, like redlined areas of Cleveland and my hometown of Lorraine. We all want to see the monarch butterflies, enjoy maple syrup, and some of you may have lakefront property, and when you saw Elena's slide of coastal erosion had a moment. We all want that for ourselves. We want the protection of our ecosystems. So this brings me to my Grandma Baker's final words of wisdom. You might not know this one. What you water grows. What you water grows. It's as true for plants as it is for policy. And if we consider that our water is our time, attention, and our dollars, we have to start giving some of that towards decarbonization. We need to be advocates for policy change. We need to eat more plants, utilize the Inflation Reduction Act. Thank you for the calculator, Dick. We need to do the 5 R's. It's not 3 anymore. We've upgraded. First, you have to refuse. We need to do all of these things. You have to start a conversation in your PTA groups, in your gardening groups. This has to happen now. So I want us to just take a moment and look left and right at the people at our table. You are not alone in this work. 70% of people on the planet care about decarbonization and protecting the planet. That's 5 billion people. You're not alone. So I just want to end by saying we're grateful to be here. We hope that you can all be the change, leave this planet better than you found it, and give your time, attention, and dollars towards decarbonization. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you, everybody. I love that sentiment. We are not alone. Look left and right, and it's so true. I would like to invite all of you to break to refill your reusable cups of coffee, water, and tea, and to check out the local businesses featured in the back of the room as we set up for our interactive youth panel. Where are we going? Note, if anyone came by transit today, we have transit passes at the registration desk, so please stop by and avail yourself of those. Our local businesses in the back, Land, you might have seen an electric bike going around earlier. That's from Land. They are versatile core batteries, provide a portable, swappable microgrid platform capable of tracking location, measuring usage, performance, and predicting maintenance swap intervals with their proprietary IoT software. and they built on core batteries. They are a local business. Their e-moto bikes that you saw are two-wheeled EVs for every skill and comfort level. So the lightweight and low standover and 4-ride modes, these are e-bikes, e-mopeds, and e-motorcycles all in one, thanks to a configurable setup, and apparently you can drive them around a public auditorium as well. The other one we have on to the left as you head back is Rust Belt Riders. It is a Cleveland-based worker-owned cooperative dedicated to climate resilience and food autonomy. The Rust Belt Riders' mission is to feed people, not landfills, which they do by providing businesses and residents with a timely composting solution for their food waste. And this food waste then becomes tilled soil, a nutrient-rich resource for farmers, home gardeners, and local food systems. By composting with Rust Belt Riders and growing with tilled soil, individuals can support a circular economy in Northeast Ohio. And you will want to come back in about 10 minutes at, let's see, where are we? At 11 o'clock, we are going to have a couple of minutes pulling raffle tickets. So some of you have some raffle tickets. You were tagged as having brought your own reusable container. So if you want to pull those raffle tickets out, at 10:40, we'll do the raffle. Rust Belt Riders is donating a 5-gallon compost bucket, a roll of bio bags, and a gift certificate for a free month of drop-off and till soil, and has donated a bag of sprout seed starting mix. Please visit their tables back in the back on the left and Land Energy on the right. Thank you. We will convene in 10 minutes. Okay, thanks everybody. We have Takora Alexander here from our Office of Sustainability. She's going to come on up and we're going to do a poll for the raffle. Our first ticket will be for the grand prize, which is the Rust Belt Riders and Till Soil package that I mentioned earlier. Takora?
So we have 940476. If you can head to the left corner here. 940469.
So just one more time, 940476 is the grand prize. Congratulations to you, and make your way over there. The rest are going to be free water bottles, and we have about 10 of those.
So the last three are 469, again 469, 481, 481, 449, 449, 423, 423, did I say 459? 459, 457, 457, 425, 425, 445, again 445, 478, 478, 417, again 417, 451, 451, 475, again 475, 421, 421, 455.
Okay, thank you everybody. If you can make your way over here. Thank you, raffle winners. Thank you, Takora.
Thanks.
All right, so just one more time. So, if your number was called, please make your way over to this. Vianney is raising her hand over in the corner here, and she can have you with your prize. So for the grand prize, you can make arrangements with Rust Belt Riders and Till Soil, who are here in person, to claim that prize. I'm going to turn it over to Felina Selden in our office. She is the Sustainability Outreach and Education Manager.
Hello, everybody. Okay, I don't hear anyone. Hello, everyone. Oh, that's much better, thanks. All right, so we're in the section for the student panel discussion. To my right, your left, are our co-moderators and the panel. By name, if you raise your hand so everyone knows who you are, we have Erica Hood. Erica is the Director of Equity and Engagement for SIAT and Black Environmental Leaders. For her bio, it says no more than one paragraph, because that's what we stressed. Erica is a Cleveland, Ohio native. She boasts over 15 years of experience in community organizing, culturally tailored programming, and advocacy. Together with her co-founders at SIAT, she curates personalized outdoor experiences for both youths and adults in the Cleveland community, promoting engagement with nature and outdoor recreation, recognizing the historical lack of Black and brown, recognizing the historical lack of Black and brown representation in these spaces. Erica emphasizes the importance of providing experience in all activities to encourage participation. She recently became a certified scuba diver to further her knowledge and skills. And as a community member or a member of the community yes, ma'am, okay. Disproportionately affected by toxic stress, chronic illnesses, and environmental injustices. Erica understands the significance of green spaces in the physical and mental well-being of her community. In her own upbringing, Erica's supportive parents exposed her to parks, landmarks, and cultural contributions throughout America, instilling in her a love for travel that she has passed on to her talented sons, Greg and Duke. If you'd like to reach out to her, she will let you know how to get in touch with her at the end of this presentation. Next, we have Ale Watson. She is a sustainability consultant and environmental advocate who is dedicated to making a positive impact on the planet. From a young age, Ale's family instilled in them a love of, Ale's family instilled in them a love of eco-consciousness, which led to a career in sustainability consulting and the pursuit of a Bachelor of Science in Sustainability. With over 5 years of experience, Ale has helped organizations and businesses reduce their environmental impact through sustainable practices and technologies. Additionally, they are an environmentalist and intersectional environmentalism champion, recognizing the deep connections between environmental justice and social justice. As a lead O&M, Ale has the expertise to help organizations reduce their environmental impact through green building project coordination and efficient resource use. Outside of work, Ale enjoys fishing, hiking, and volunteering with local environmental organizations. All right, next we have our student panel. Angelis Carballero. Angelis is a student at John Marshall High School of Civic and Business Leadership. Beyond high school, Angelis plans to get a Master's of Science in Nursing and an Associate's in Psychology in order to become a psychiatric nurse practitioner. When asked about her commitment to the environment, she says, "People don't give nature enough care or attention. Learning more about environmental factors and spreading that knowledge is my way of making up for it." Next, we have Lornick Rodriguez. Lornick is a student at John Marshall High School of Information Technology. Beyond high school, Lornick plans to major in biomedical biophysics to pursue a career as a physician's assistant with a focus on neurology. When asked about her commitment to the environment, she says, "The environment and humans are both intertwined. We owe our lives to our natural environment as we both, plants and humans alike, grow from it. To respect our environment as I would another human is my commitment. Making sure I do my part to clean the planet and plant and learn to help our environment will always be a lifelong goal." Third, we have Benita Biswa? Okay. Benita is a student at John Marshall High School of Civic and Business Leadership. Beyond high school, Benita plans to get a Master's of Business with a focus on human resource management. When asked about her commitment to the environment, she says, "Everyone deserves a home. If humans do, so do plants. I am passionate about replanting native plants because this is our home. This this is their home. They were there before us and will be there after us. A garden of native plants is more beautiful than one full of invasive plants that ruins others. Fourth, we have Akshar Patel. Akshar is a student at John Marshall High School of Civic Business and Leadership Beyond High School. Akshar plans to get a major in business administration with a focus on sports management. When asked about his commitment to the environment, he says, taking care of the environment should not be an obligation. Our environment is supposed to be our life. Next, we have Oma Dahal. Oma is a student at John Marshall High School Civic and Business Leadership. Beyond high school, Oma plans to get a major in medicine to pursue a career as a medical doctor. When asked about her commitment to the environment, she says, I believe that the test of this generation is whether we are willing to sacrifice their time for the future of coming generations. And last, we have Nu Sheikh. Nu is a student at John Marshall High School of Engineering. Beyond high school, Nu plans to attend The Ohio State University to major in aeronautical engineering. And when asked about his commitment to the environment, he says, if we work today, we will see ourselves tomorrow. On your tables, you have a glossary of terms. On the back of your glossary of terms, you have a game. We have 3 prizes for the people who can finish it first. I'm giving you a head start. We also have at the bottom, if you have any questions, on the back of your glossary of terms, there's a section where you can write a question. Just rip and tear that and pass it to us. We'll try to get to your questions. If we don't get to it today, we will make sure we reply in our wrap-up after today. I'm going to turn it over to our co-moderators. We'll come back for the game at the end. Sorry.
Hello, everyone. So I feel like the attention is on the game because folks want to win.
True, but they don't know how hard it is.
Okay.
I have the answers.
All right. So we have multitaskers in the room. So again, my name is Erica Hood, and I am just so pleased to be here. And I'm super excited to sit here with some wonderful and talented young people who represent my alma mater, John Marshall. Whoop, whoop. So make some noise if you're a CMSD grad. Put your hands up. Yes, CMSD creates amazing and talented individuals back in my day and evidently still today. So I'm super proud to represent our schools. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. We have a few questions for you all. And for group number 1, we're here, it's a fancy word, decarbonization, but we wanna know, like, how important is decarbonization to our society?
All right, let me start off with this. So decarbonization, right? The thing is, our grandpas, right, they thought of us, or okay, let's say one day I'll be a father, one day I'll be a granddad, one day I'll be a great-great-granddad, right? So if we work now, we'll possibly pave our future, and if we don't think about this right now, and it's gonna hurt our future generations. We don't want to end up like the dinosaurs, just, yeah. Foreshadowing.
And do you want to give a brief description on your projects quickly?
All right, so a quick description on a project. We're working on a composting project, so I'm sitting at the lunch table, and you know what, quick side note, how everybody talks bad about school lunches, right? And all the food goes to waste. I'm just sitting at the table, I'm like, that's a lot of food going to waste. Why not do something about it? Why not, even there's a lot of food that's not opened and that's gone to waste, so we could probably use it up for something better. And that's my main focus, to make sure even the unused food should not go to waste, and rather should be recycled and repurposed for something better, or even donated to food banks. That's the main goal here.
Thank you for sharing.
For sure.
So for the microplastics group.
Okay, so you wanted to, oh wait, you're gonna ask the question.
Okay, so what is one thing you want adults in the room to take away from this discussion?
Okay, so.
And give a brief description of your
Okay.
project first.
Okay.
And then answer the question.
Okay, so a brief description of our projects was it was focused on removing microplastics from Lake Erie, and in doing research, we saw how many different factors environmentally with the biodiversity in Lake Erie and with us, how that affects us. And so we came up with the idea to remove those microplastics and turn it into jewelry and to make it into something beautiful to raise awareness about it.
So to answer your questions, for me, I want others to comprehend that problems at hand and realize that one person's actions can add up to a good or bad reaction. To continue a path where no change has begun due to yourself thinking a simple action isn't merely enough is to give up on the earth itself. As we humans think, since we are so small, even one tiny action of recycling will not be enough. It will add up to something amazing.
You hear that, audience? Every small action is one way to decrease your personal and global environmental impact. And the future knows it, because the future is standing right here in front of us. So thank you for answering that question. Moving on to the next group. What role can government policies and regulations play in promoting decarbonization? You guys had to go through the process of going to authority for your project. So give a brief description on your project and tell me what role can government policies and regulations play in decarbonization?
So our project, basically, we aim to replant native plants in our greenhouse infrastructure. Greenhouse. We basically found this as a solution to use our greenhouse that was abandoned because after an experiment that we conducted in our school, we found that there was limited to almost no native species around Cleveland and our school. So we asked for funding to repair the infrastructure of our greenhouse to plant native plants. We see this as an opportunity to boost the biodiversity of Cleveland itself, and we came to answer the question. We found this as a way to boost the biodiversity because we were educated about the native plants and everything like that. And we believe that the government plays a very crucial part. It plays a very important part in promoting decarbonization, because they're replicating the enthusiasm that the audience can replicate. I'm sorry, I'm nervous.
It's all good.
So as the policies are, as the sciences, as the science is advancing and more research are being done, the policies need to be updated. And we believe that the education also is a very crucial part because elementary school kids are not informed about the importance and the damage that the nature is experiencing right now. As like right now, we have climate change that is occurring, and it's happening in a very rapid way, very faster than what we saw in the past. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm nervous. I'm sorry.
Thank you for getting through it.
Don't be nervous. You all are doing a great job. And while I have the honor of working with young people in my organization, and I learned a lot in my role, I know the value of you all's voices and experiences. So we know that you play a major part in our future when it comes to environmental justice and decarbonization. But what we may not understand is how to get more youth involved in environmental justice and decarbonization and talking about climate change. So we need to hear from you. How do we get more youth involved to be in summits like this or to do their part? And any group can answer that question.
So in my opinion, I feel like a lot of youth, teenagers, or whoever, they're too invested in social media. I would say advertisements could be a possible thing. Well, posters is another option, but come on, there's like 1990s things. Who even reads those? Whatever, okay. Or I would say hold more summits like these It's a great way for us adults to learn and discuss stuff like this, and even integrate stuff like this into our education system. Not to say anything bad about the American system, but I feel like we could do much better and add classes to, our high schools or even middle schools to educate children. Yeah.
Shout out to Laura Schools, who's doing that.
Oh, hey, GGs, let's go.
Let's hear from your friends.
To answer the question, I feel that the best way to get youth engaged is to actually move forward with sustainability action plans and to try to connect the importance of these plans to something that may be personal and important to youth, such as public parks that are in the area, recreation centers, and lakes in the area. We need to give youth reasons to want to be engaged in helping the environment.
Thank you.
Oh, can I add something to that?
Of course.
For the education that NEW had implemented, I especially want more education for students that are of people of color, specifically, especially with the red line. It is especially a really big problem.
Let the people know. Put the mic to your mouth. Let the people know. Come on now.
It's such a big problem that minorities do not have the education that they deserve to know about these problems, especially me being from Puerto Rico. We did not know anything about these problems. So thank you. That's the opinion.
All right, John Marshall. Okay.
Erica. Just like my missing friend mentioned about, I think, amazing friend. I think the answer to that question is education. Education is, a lot of kids go to high school, they go to middle school, elementary school, and they're conditioned. That's how we learn the basic functions of how to be a human, social skills. That's how we learn everything. And I think being able to focus on environmental problems, like how we focus on mental health, personal health, how we focus on history, science. I think environmental problems should also be a focus in our school system because that's where students learn social issues. And I think without a teacher like Ms. Brown, we would not have the opportunity to create our projects. We would not have the opportunity to talk about environmental issues. We would not have the opportunity to even, start our composting project, our butterfly project, our microplastic project, I feel like without encouraging teachers, without encouraging, teachers who are encouraging administrators who are willing to help us and support us, I think CMSD is very progressive with, our project because we also, me and my friend here, for our composting project, we have talked to administrators from CMSD who were very helpful and they were very collaborative in our project, and they were willing to help us. They were willing to, support us in our journey of the composting project. And that's a new thing in CMSD, and I'm glad that we're influencing. Our main goal is to influence other schools to also participate in this environmental, initiative. I feel like, so I think the main thing is education, to answer the question, briefly. I think the main thing is education. We have a lot of grown-ups here, and you guys all have kids, and I think parents, what we learn at home is also very crucial to to what's important to us, to our values, to our beliefs, and to have importance for environmental problems, importance, to want to solve these issues. I feel like parents should also talk to their kids about environmental problems, why it's important, because kids are the future of our world. And if we don't make changes now, we won't have a future. We won't have a society in the future. So, education.
Thank you for answering that question. So we're saying that it starts at home, it starts at school, and you guys will be able to take that information and use that for your future.
And I'm also hearing that we need to host another event that is youth-led so that your voices can be heard and that you can help us kind of put it together. It may not be a summit or fancy summit, but whatever you all see fit to get some more of your peers in the room to have these conversations.
Exactly.
So how can we encourage individuals, businesses, and governments to take action to reduce? So we talked a little bit about the personal responsibilities, but what about some of our local businesses? How can we get them excited?
Let's hear from your friends.
Businesses.
Businesses. Local businesses. How many mics? Let's go.
I wouldn't say excited, more of showing the businesses that their actions do in fact have consequences, since I know most big markets do kind of overpush the people, but to get them excited, I would say is to show them that there is big benefits to what they will be doing. It's not just they will do it and everybody will just ignore it. It of course will have benefits to their income in business, and especially in exposure. If they do something good, of course it's going to be on the news and everything.
Thank you for answering that question. So we're going to close this out. We once again want to say thank you so much for being here. Thank you to our panelists. You are the future. We appreciate your voice, and we are glad that you have stepped up and sit yourself at the table. So thank you. Thank you to the audience for listening and enjoying our conversation.
Wonderful educators who are help guiding them and facilitating this. This is great. Thank you.
They thank you already. But at the end of every discussion like this, when we talk about sustainability, when we talk about environmental justice, when we talk about decarbonization, we want to think about what's the call to action. So here's the question that we have for all of you and the panelists. How can we ensure that the benefits of decarbonization and environmental justice are distributed fairly and equitably across different communities and social groups? Take a second to think about that. Panelists?
Okay, so my answer for this question would be to implement green landscapes in areas that are not as rich as the areas that may already have greener land. Distributing these sustainable resources to areas that may not be able to purchase other sustainable products. We need to replace invasive trees and other plant species with species that are more native and in all areas of the city. Sustainability is important everywhere, even in the less fortunate areas.
Thank you so much for answering that question. And I hope that you, as the audience, is there more? Yeah. Okay, let's hear it.
According to studies, it has shown that effects of climate change and environmental problems has affected the most vulnerable populations to this issue is people, low-income individuals living in the inner city of every state, country, whatever. I think we have to make the benefits equitable for everyone. I think we have to focus on which region of the state is which region of the state is the most vulnerable and has the most problems. Like for example, in Cleveland, we have air quality issues, we have heat waves issues, we have a lot of issues that we need to solve. And being in the inner city where there's low-income individuals who are struggling to pay rent, I think we have, as a person from the inner city, from a low-income background, I think it's very important to also mention that my parents, they're not able to think of environmental problems because they have other problems like rent, like the future, like how to pay for my schooling, how to live comfortably. They're not able to think about environmental problems, and I think that's a really big issue because we do not have the resources or the privilege to even focus on environmental problems, and that's an issue because if we want to focus on the environment, everyone should be focusing on it. But it's unfortunate that people in low income areas, they're not able to focus on it because of their different struggles. And I think having good air quality, having a clean environment to live in should be the right of every human being, and not just people who are rich, not just people who can afford it. I think it should be for everyone. And we have to focus on the inner city a lot because we do not have the resources to clean our environment.
Good, good. Did you hear that? Did you hear the diction of privilege? Of
Oh, sorry.
we
Can
need
you
to
answer the how? On the how question?
pardon?
You said how can we establish equality in these educations? So can I pinpoint it?
Okay, if you have 30 seconds. Let's go.
Okay, so especially since we mentioned specifically low-income housing and everything on that portion, I think we should really put CMSD on a route to educate specifically lower-income schools, and instead of putting events and other stuff that do not really equal to sustainability education. Was that good enough?
Awesome. That's more than good enough. So you've heard from the future of sustainability and the environmental justice movement. You've heard their voices, you've heard their responses, and you know their thoughts, and you know that they're grateful that you are helping them along the way. So again, we want to thank you for being here. Thank you for listening, and thank you for listening to the future.
Let's give them a round of applause.
Two things. Thank you very much. And thank you all. Two things. Can I have all the students in the room please stand so everyone can see how many students are here with us today? Thank you. Second, does anyone else have any other questions from the audience? Because we did not take questions from you yet. If you do and you'd like to step up to the mic, you're welcome to do so. Otherwise, you can write your question, tear it off of the bottom of your page for the glossary of terms, and leave it on the table, and we will collect it at the end. And last, the moment I know most of you have been waiting for, you have, let me put the timer on. You're going to have 1 minute to solve as many of those and to unscramble as many of those in the game. Are we ready? Is that a yes? Okay, starting now. Anyone else not playing the game, this is your opportunity to stretch. For the record, a couple of them have 2 words. Okay, 4, 3, 2, 1, time. Who solved all of them? Show of hands. Oh, okay. Who solved 2 of them? All but 1, sorry. Anybody have less than 3 remaining? You guys are going to kill me. My answer sheet is down there. I'm going to get the... All right, so the person who has all of them. I'm reading them right now. Thank you. I love your enthusiasm. Number 1 is carbon neutral. Ooh. Number 2 is sustainable.
Sustainable.
Conservation is the third one. Portable water is number 4. Number 5 is renewable energy. Number 6 is ozone. Number 7 is fossil fuels. Number 8 is electric vehicle. Number 9 is preventing emissions. And number 10 is energy. Who had them all? There could be extra letters. That's to throw you off. Who got 9 right? 8 correct? 7? The person who got 7 right, come on up for your prize. 6 correct? Please come up if you have 6 correct. Here you go. I only have 3, so if you got 1. Andrew, you have 1. Andrew, I'll get you this time. I'll get you. Give me your name. I know where to find you. I know where to find you. I'll give you 1. Thanks, everybody. We're going to move along to the next thing on the schedule. That means, Sarah, you're back up. Dismissed. Thank you, everybody. Huh. I'm sorry, it's Anna Natarajan who's coming up. Come on over. Why am I getting a shout out? Because I've done 17 years?
It's okay, yes. Well, late morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Anand Natarajan, Assistant Director of the Mayor's Office of Sustainability. First of all, again, let's give a big shout out to the longest serving sustainability staff in the city of Cleveland. Felina Selden, amazing job. Give yourself a big round of applause for showing up and meeting up in person again. It's been quite a minute, as they say, right? More than 2 years. So again, thank you all for joining us today. I would also like to acknowledge all our past directors and chiefs and people who worked in the Mayor's Office of Sustainability, because we stand on the shoulders of giants. If you could just please stand and be acknowledged, I would really appreciate it. Anybody else? I saw Andrew, I saw Jason. No, nobody's hiding. I saw Kristen. There you go.
Patty's over there.
Patty. Back in 2009, Andrew started this with the former mayor, and he thought he had it out, but then the mayor said, when can we do this again? And he almost had a heart attack. I know that. So, but here we are, after 2019, 2 years with COVID, did it remote, but we are so glad to be in person again. I just want to be brief with the rest of the thank yous. Again, we want to thank our mayor, Mayor Justin Bibb, for providing his remarks, to Dr. Apana Bol for kicking out the opening remarks today, and Power a Clean Future Ohio for both presenting the city with the awards. Thank you. And then, of course, we had Mr. Gordon McCord from the STSN here providing his remarks. Deepa Vedavyas, Cleveland Foundation, another former sustainability staff. So it's just a big alumni meeting here almost, right, today. So thank you, all of you. We were also very encouraged to hear about the Northeast Ohio climate reality projects. You heard from 3 people today. It was really interesting to hear about local work, right? We always hear about work done on the coast, but just to find out something done on in the region is really good. And we had, of course, Mr. Sachs coming through us through his video. Always, as much information you can need about decarbonization and climate change, he's the best resource out there. And so we're so glad he could join us, albeit by video. Again, we also want to give a big shout out again to the small businesses who could be here with us. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And last but not the least, students, right? It's all about the younger generation. Give a big round of applause to the students and everybody who made it here. Of course. Last but not the least, right? We talked about alumni, we talked about former chiefs and directors. We could not make this happen, first of all, with all the tireless volunteers, both within the sustainability staff, everybody, and I'm going to start naming them. If I miss somebody, please pardon me. Sarah O'Keefe, who's currently doing an interview right now, myself, Anand, Felina Selden, Kathy, Brittany Montgomery, Tikor Alexander, Elizabeth Lehman, Umar Farouk, Vianney, all the city council fellows who've been putting tireless hours into this, the SDSN staff, of course, who I named many of them. Thank you, thank you, thank you for making this a success. And of course, our vendors, Rock the House, for bringing this, all the work here. And to the public auditorium and the City of Cleveland staff, thank you again. We cannot do this without you. And so with that, I just have one logistical announcement to make. Anybody who has a tag or a sticker on your badge, we're not letting you go easily, so you're going to stay back and continue to work with us. Everybody else, we will continue to be in touch with you through all our virtual channels. Again, we want to give you a big round of applause and thank you for showing up in person. And the next time we meet, hopefully we can fill up the auditorium again, right? So anybody who has a sticker on their badge, please stay back. You will be guided to your next session. And everybody else who's not, thank you for coming. Appreciate it.